All right, well, it's one thing to print unpopular or provocative points of view in the opinion pages. We saw what happened when the New York Times published one by Senator Tom Cotton. But this week, the Wall Street Journal gave Vice President Mike Pence a platform to essentially claim we've beaten coronavirus, despite facts to the contrary. Right off the bat, the vice president starts his op-ed with something false, writing,
"The media has taken to sounding the alarm bells over a second wave of coronavirus infections. Such panic is overblown."
No, for the most part, the media has been quite clear, says CNN medical correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
We haven't gotten out of the first wave yet. I mean, the idea of talking about the second wave is something that may not even be a reality here.
And the World Health Organization reports that parts of China are indeed facing a second wave. So yes, that's been reported. Pence also writes in his op-ed that more than half of states are actually seeing cases decline or remain stable. True, but Gupta says many states are having an increase in COVID while testing is going down. Case in point, Oklahoma.
1/5 of the entire case count in Oklahoma happened over the last week. 1/5, 20%.
But as CNN's Jeremy Diamond says, Pence's op-ed is really more about the economy than COVID.
What we have increasingly seen from this White House is a focus really on reopening the economy for these last several weeks.
And regardless of public health concerns expressed by their own expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Pence has publicly dismissed concerns over COVID.
The vice president, knowing not to contradict the president, of course, never does that, showed up today at a crowded diner in Iowa.
Not wearing a mask. So while the vice president might not know better, what is the Wall Street Journal's excuse? Yeah, so Dan Lothian, I mean, we did a whole piece last week on all the journalists who've really had their heads chopped off in recent weeks for either printing something or saying something insensitive or factually inaccurate. You know, this is ridiculous. The Wall Street Journal, I know they're a more conservative news outlet, which is fine. I mean, they have a lot of thoughtful opinion pieces, most of them. But this was, again, rife with misinformation. How can they let that go?
I really did have a problem with this because it's irresponsible. You know, if we're talking about something that wasn't life or death, then I probably would not have such a hard stand on something like this. But people out there are frustrated. The general public, business owners want to reopen. Everyone wants to get back to life as normal. And they're looking for an excuse to sort of justify and back them up. They do believe that reporters are making this whole thing up, which, frankly, I don't know why the reason would be for that. It could be played up more, more headlines and so forth, but reporters reporting the information that they're getting from medical experts. And I think, to allow, even though it's an opinion piece and labeled as such, I think it is irresponsible for a news organization to run with something like this, knowing what's at stake, knowing that people will just read it, believe it, and go out there and potentially lose their lives.
Like him.
Well, when you look at the vice president's op-ed and compare it to the one from Senator Tom Cotton that created so much controversy at the Times, unlike Cotton's op-ed, Pence's wasn't so much filled with false information as it was a bizarrely optimistic spin on the facts. And so therefore, if you're going to go through and try to edit it, I think that was a bigger challenge. Plus, I don't think the Wall Street Journal's extremely conservative editorial page was that interested in editing it anyway. It was, in fact, accompanied by a video op-ed by one of their columnists, Daniel Henninger, that was, if anything, even worse. It described the early prediction that 2.2 million Americans would die as a lie, when in fact the reason that's not happening is because of the steps that have been taken in terms of mask and social distancing.
Exactly.
I think it's very telling that this appeared in the Wall Street Journal. There's a very specific audience they're trying to reach with that. They're trying to justify reopening. They're trying to justify not having people stay at home. They're trying to make business owners and titans of industry feel better about what they're doing. But this is, history shows us what's happened before in pandemics. Journalists didn't make up the second wave of the Spanish flu, did they? We know what happens if things go a certain way. And right now, as Dan pointed out, we haven't gotten, actually, Dan didn't point out, but as we pointed out in the video, the first wave hasn't finished yet. So maybe the subhead's accurate. Maybe the deck is accurate. There's no second wave yet. But I think all in all, I feel also that it was pretty irresponsible to run this. There's no call to action like in Tom Cotton's, but there's a very subtle call to dismiss medical expertise. And I think that can be dangerous here as well.
You know, I agree with what Dan was saying earlier. And on the one hand, yes, it was your proverbial alternative set of facts, but it was also just this bizarre form of spin. And I also agree with what Dan was saying. I think what the Journal should have done was run a companion opposing opinion piece on it and given people something to think about and give another side to this, or at the very least done some contemporaneous fact checking on their website so people could at least look at it and see immediately that there were facts in here that could be called into question, or at the very least be interpreted in another way. You know, of all the things he said, bottom line, I think he said that we've made all this progress because of the president's leadership. I just think I would disagree with that. I would say we made it in spite of the president's leadership, which I think has been divisive at this point and not moving us forward to a cure. You look no further than the fact that the man has not worn a mask and is holding this rally tomorrow night, I think, is evidence of that.
So, Dan Kennedy, I'm going to take a little bit of issues with you because, I mean, he completely slighted over the fact that many of the southern states are dramatically increasing in the last just 6 or 7 days. I mean, dramatically. And the testing rates are down, which means it could be even higher than that he's saying. He was talking about 20 states that have recently seen dramatic decreases. That's true. But he failed to recognize the increases, which was an intentional slight.
That's right. And I think the way I would describe this column was largely accurate, but not true. And that was the problem with it. It was this weirdly optimistic gloss on the facts, and it did not add up to something that was true.
Well, let's hope that he's right, because nobody wants to be, prove him wrong on this.